y'all, it's Jay from Jay's Decor and Restore. Welcome back. If you watched my first video, then you'll know that I am working on a cable spool to turn it into a beautiful patio table. And if you haven't watched it, you need to. Because I really kind of talk about how I came about this project, and actually I changed it halfway through based on a custom order I received. So, you know, again, take a look at it, subscribe. There is going to probably be about 4 parts to this video because it is such a big project. But in today's video, I'm going to be reviewing sanding, and I'm going to talk about a couple of different types of sanders and some other sanding products that I use. I'm also going to be talking about the wood filler. Wood filler is what I'm going to be using to fill some of those broken pieces and some of those nooks and crannies to get a really good, smooth, clean surface for that top of that table. So let's go ahead and dig in. Before getting started, I wanted to go ahead and show you the sanders that I have and kind of tell you why I prefer to use one in particular. So here we have an orbital sander, which is great. It actually works really well for sanding in a project like this. The reason I don't use it is because I have small hands, and trying to grip this, especially for projects where there's a lot of sanding involved, my hand gets really tired. And I one time applied too much pressure just because my hand was getting too tired, and I created some circles in the wood. It's not intended to do that, but again, you have to just be really careful about the amount of pressure that you're applying when using that. This is a finishing sander, and this is my favorite one. I specifically bought this one because it has a handle. So you'll see me using this in pretty much just about every project that requires sanding in my videos. And if you have a Harbor Freight where you live, this is where I bought it. Harbor Freight is my new Michael Kors. I love going there because they have some great tools and at reasonable prices. So this is a finishing sander, which is what I'll be using for this project. And then this is a block sander, which I will also be using for this project. And this is really what I use for those hard to reach places. You know, for example, the edge of the base of the spool table where I added the wood filler. I'll be going around there and just kind of sanding off to smooth that surface so that the primer and the paint will adhere nicely to it. And then I just wanted to show you a couple of the different sandpaper and the grits that I have here. So this one is a 60, and this is really intended for your coarse surfaces, which is what I'll be using for this spool table. This is a 220, which is an extra fine sandpaper, and intended for those projects that really don't require a lot of, you know, sanding and just trying to create that smooth surface. And then I have here a 120, which is a medium coarse. So these are the different sandpapers that I have. I am going to show you, as I'm sanding, I'm going to use both of them just so that you can see, you know, how easy it is to sand if you have an orbital sander, don't feel like you have to go out and buy another one. I just prefer one with a handle. So we'll get started with sanding in a bit. All right, so I just wanted to show you, again, it works nicely. This is so nice and smooth now. So I'm going to put this one aside, and I am going to bring out my favorite one. I think I need to name this just because it's one of my favorite tools to use. So here we go. Again, nice smooth surface, and I did find here, which I need to probably fill in with some wood filler, that some of this wood is coming up. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and finish sanding. Before starting to sand, I needed to fill in some of these large cracks that you can see here so that we can create a nice smooth surface. So I've already started one over here, if you can see that. And I'm gonna go ahead, I wanted to save this one so that you can see how easy it is to fill that in. So I bought this DAP plastic wood, and that's one of the reasons why I started over here. I wanted to see how well that worked for these holes. And it seems to work really well. So the reason you want to do this first is that once it's all filled in and dried, then you will sand the whole thing. I'm putting quite a bit here because I want to create a nice mound to fill in that big hole. And I start off with a knife, but after a while I realized that sometimes the finger actually works better to get into some of these little nooks here. So I'm going to just fill that in here. And there's a lot of different methods out there, but for something this small, you see now I'm going to start using my finger. It's just a lot easier to get all of this spread out here. For a lot of the smaller projects, I think that something like this works best. I mean, epoxy actually also works really well, but it does, you have to mix up quite a bit. So for something this small, I don't think it's necessary to bring out the epoxy. So I'm gonna just keep filling this in, and then what I'll do is when I finish, when I get ready to sand, I'll come back and you can see how I start to sand it down. So it's gonna take me a little bit to fill in this big of a hole, but that's really what you need to do, is just buy some of this DAB or something similar to it, plastic wood, for small projects like this. And I'll be back when we start sanding. So I wanted to show you, I've now added the wood filler here, and you can see that it's pretty rough. I added quite a bit to kind of create a little mound. It's dry. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna show you after sanding it how smooth you can get it down. So you're gonna see like bits of this flying off, and that's okay. That's kind of what it's meant to do. So let me go ahead and get started. And I'm going to lower the volume on the video so that you won't have to hear the sound of the sander all this time. Okay, I'm going to stop right there because it's going to require a little bit more, but I mean, you can get the idea of, now look how much smoother it is. And all these other cracks that I've filled, I'm going to sand all that down. So, but you get the idea. All right, we'll be back with the next step. And this is going to be the end of this section of the video for the spool table project. Stay tuned for the next video where I start to prime and prepare the spool for painting. So again, if you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so that you can see the continuation of this project. See you soon.